And hello, it is me with another poem from Lewis. Um, the sixth book in the Icy Things in Blue series. I wrote this one again during the when I was writing short blocks of poetry. I was in college at the time, so I was somewhere in between 28 and 31. Because I didn't finish, so I either finished when I was 30 or I stopped after I got 30 on birthdays in October. So it's a little sketchy there. But that's when I wrote this one. And that's when I wrote a good chunk of these poems while I was there. So in my late 20s, when I say my late 20s, early 30s, that's exactly what I mean. Because I think I started the college when I was either 28 or 27, and you do 3 years, and so that's why that kind of poetry gap is there. But I got into it because the local poetry place, they were doing something at the college, and I wrote a poem, quite literally, right there on the spot, thinking, maybe I'll go up. But the time kind of spanned, and it was someone that I went to school in church with that was hosting it at the time there at the college in the cafeteria hall. And so they invited me out. I was like, I wrote this poem, so we're doing this. Um, and then I remember it also vividly because a friend I met online in Australia, they came down to visit after, in between jobs and stuff. And they came down to visit, and I did poetry, and they were there with me when I did this poetry, when I performed this poem for the first time. So when I say a lot of my poems kind of happened in gaps, like the high school batch in early 20s, and then this college batch, I continued to write after I left. While I was writing books, like I didn't just stop. So my early 30s have a good batch, and my late 20s, whereas my early 20s and stuff also when I was writing books. So different phases of me journeying as a writer. And I remember this one vividly because I didn't know what I had when I wrote it. And my English lit professor at the time said something about it, and who they had shared it with because they were friends. Another lecturer who I also had, I think, for social studies. And when they said what they said, I took a step back and I was like, oh, okay, I can see that. And that's what I like because I said, that really wasn't my intent when I wrote it. Like, this is news to me, like, this is brand new, but I can't unsee it because that's what I kind of like about art when it's, again, simple enough that you don't have to try too hard. You can easily associate things with it and find deeper meaning. And I thought that what they said to me was infinitely deeper. Whether they thought it was deeper than where I was going with it or not is debatable. But I was like, yeah, that's pretty heavy. So yeah, that's the story for this one. Instead of saying I have the story about this one and doing it afterwards, you got it before. This one is called Flower. He loves me not. He loves me not. He loves me. As my last paddle is thrown aside, I realize I've given up my beauty for someone else's happiness. I've been violated, forcibly plucked and torn apart, and now that my job is done, there is no more use for me. I've been raped of my worth, and now I'm just an ugly stem thrown aside. The energy that I came with this was when you give someone everything, I said, I'm going to take the flower. When you give someone everything and they literally take all that you have to further themselves in life, that is their main goal. And then once they have used you up, they move on. And that's why I used the flower as an analogy because so many people pick them up. He loves me not. He loves me, he loves me not. And they pull off each petal and they go through it. And petals can be associated to innocence and, love and beauty and things like that. And they obviously can be blocked. And I sat with it and I said, but once you're done with this, once you're done with it, you've used it for your own purposes to play your little fun game of whether someone you're interested in loves you. But then what? You just throw the stem aside. And I said, that's an interesting take, to take on something. And that's where this poem breathed from. I'm definitely not going to touch on all of the other ways that you can view this because that's on y'all. But there are definitely heavier and more potent things you can get from this short piece. But that was the lane I was in, about people using you for their pleasure and then just moving on. Using you for their advancement and then just moving on. Using you to get what they want and then just moving on. And that's what this poem is about. And where it concerns Dario is that his parents, especially his mother, had lofty dreams for him to become a gospel artist. And that was their main focus, their main goal, is that they were going to use him to fund their situation. And she's also a motivational speaker. She didn't start off making like tons of money, but that's what she does. And eventually she used the Christian Avenue the same way that she was trying to use Dario. But, I can't really say how that played out until I get into the next book. But a lot of it plays into this very specific poem Flower about using people to get to where you want to be in life. And that's Dario's very existence. Like everything about him was something that they fostered to show off, to use, to talk about in public, but to completely neglect and ignore behind closed doors. He didn't sing that mouse in the house unless he was hiding in his room where his piano also was, where he has a headset. So we're going to praise you for all these wonderful, amazing things that you can do. But the moment you're in this house, we don't care anymore. And that's where Flower is. It's like we are quite literally using the best of you until that no longer works for us. And at some point, that's exactly what happened for Dario. And he had to pivot and switch lanes and take a different path. And that's why I like this one, because it's so intense without really saying much. It's very subtle and very demure about the deep message that it holds. And I like doing that sometimes, just putting something big in a tight, almost pretty kind of like package, more beautiful than pretty, because this one flows very nice, but it's sad. And that is another main reason why it's in Lewis, because if it was going to be anywhere, if a poem about being completely and totally ripped, not ripped, I don't even want to say raped, even though it's in the poem, that's a better word, completely and totally violated of your very essence, maybe? I think that's a better word. Dario, what's that? And so it fits. If in any book, it had to be in Lewis's book. And I'm going to say that likely after all of them, and maybe you'll agree after actually hearing what's in the poems. But yeah. So some good things came out of that character limit before Facebook realized that letting people chat is a good thing. And there's no limit. So here we are. At least I haven't reached it yet, and I've written whole essays. So we'll see. But if you've made it this far, as per usual, thanks for stopping by.